Okay, the recording is set. Please start it.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, staff, consultant team, community members, any council and planning commissioners that are in attendance of the meeting. Thank you for joining us for this evening for the Downtown Specific Plan Charrette. And I'll hand it over to Kaiser Rangwala, our Downtown Specific Plan consultant.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, everybody, for attending this first evening presentation for the Downtown Specific Plan. As Ron mentioned, my name is Kaiser Rangwala. I am with Rangwala Associates. And throughout the 3 days, you'll get to meet various members of our team. This evening, I'll introduce to you the next member of the team that is about to, that will speak after me, and then she will introduce the other members, and we will proceed accordingly. Some of you were with us at the focus group meeting and at the joint meeting, but if you're new, welcome. We're still very early in the process, and we value your judgment and your input and your feedback. This is the process that you see on the screen. It's roughly 6 steps. We are currently past the discovery stage. The discovery stage is where we gather information on the community, both in terms of quantitative as well as qualitative information. We've conducted a series of interviews and conducted discovery work related to the market, to the place, to the people, trying to understand the mobility patterns and the parking patterns. And we're done with that, and we're going to present some of that at noon during the noon talks. We had an exciting talk by Michael earlier today at noon. That presentation is available online, so if you missed that, you can access that presentation on the Charrette page on the project website, and I'll share the project website address with you shortly. So as I mentioned, we're past the discovery. We're at visioning. We're at the visioning stage, the community visioning process stage, and this is where we want to consult with you. We want to share what we understood, what we have understood the downtown area to be. And we want your input and your feedback to establish a baseline. And then once we do that, we want to engage you in thinking about the future, about what the future of downtown Baldwin Park could be. So that's the agenda for the next 3 days. And then once we do that, we will get into production stage where we pull together the specific plan and the various components of the specific plan, including the community vision that was established in these following 3 days. And then the review and refine stage, and we are hoping for adoption roughly in the August-September timeframe. So it's roughly about 9 to 10 months process. This is the agenda for the Charrette in the morning, or rather at noon time. We'll have noon talks. We had the first noon talk by Michael today, on market assessment development strategy. Again, that's available online and on the project Facebook page. Tomorrow, join us at noon for Vinayak's presentation on elements of successful downtown. He's going to touch on architecture and urban design and contextual and graceful density concepts for the downtown area. And then on the final day at noon, we'll have a talk by Tim Ernie from Kittleson, who will talk on the mobility trends and opportunities that are available within the Southern California, that have been adopted in Southern California, and some of the disruptive technologies and concepts that we are seeing in the future, and how we can take advantage of that in downtown Baldwin Park. So that's the noon agenda. And then in the evening, we will have presentations as the one that we are about to have this evening. And we're hoping this is incremental and iterative, in that we'll share with you some of what our findings are today, and then we want your feedback. And then we'll respond to that feedback and come back and show you how we have adjusted or how we have refined the plans further. And our goal is we'll work through this through the 3-day process. And at the end of the process, we hope to have a master plan, a community-supported, community-driven master plan ready for downtown Baldwin Park. So this is the project area. What you see in the dark purple is the old, you have an existing specific plan for this downtown area that was adopted about 3 years ago. And there are new opportunities that have presented itself, and you've used the specific plan for 3 years, and there's some challenges with implementation that we also want to address. Besides that, we have taken a look at some of the parcels that are new opportunities and included those parcels. So in the light purple are areas that we have added to the original specific plan. And essentially, this is a project area. This is an aerial rendering prepared by Mullen Polozoit of the project area. And I wanted to reflect a little bit on the history here. Baldwin Park dates back to 1860, which is about 142 years. And your downtown developed as a walkable, transit-oriented downtown around the old Pacific line, old Pacific Electric red car line that ran in the middle of Ramona. Ramona is the diagonal boulevard that you see, and the red line is the current Metrolink line that comes to town. In 1950s, this electric car, electric red car was dismantled. And since 1950s, you have adopted, the city, like many other Southern California city, has adopted a commercial pattern of development that's primarily driven by the automobile. So you have a lot of commercial strip centers. Again, as many cities coming out of the World War II were looking at growth, you were redeveloping some of your parcels, some of your downtown parcels. The thought and the prevailing thought in that time was growth. If it's bigger, it's better. What we are finding now is that's not necessarily the case, that there's a distinction between growth and creation of wealth. For example, what we are finding is, and I'll give you an example using Baldwin Park. On Baldwin Park, you have smaller businesses that line up on Ramona. And you have larger businesses that are essentially arranged around a parking area that are primarily auto-driven. And if you look at some of the value creation from those parcels, you compare them, value per acre, what we are finding in a number of cities, and if we did a similar study here, we would find similar results, is that there is more value in the smaller business, more value created in terms of revenues coming to the city as property tax and sales tax from the smaller business than the larger format development patterns that you see. And the reason for that primarily is parking lots don't generate revenues. Buildings do. Now, you look at this diagram and it's very telling. About 2/3 of the downtown area is dedicated to either the storage or movement of automobiles. And again, if you think about wealth creation is not from automobiles or storage of automobiles or parking areas. It's from buildings. It's from development. And I think as we look at the future, and Phyllis is going to talk about parking in a little bit. These parking lots that you have within your downtown present a huge opportunity to redefine and to regain some of what you've lost that you had in your old glory days as a transit-oriented downtown that was primarily served by the red line, and now we need to figure out what is going to serve us in the future and how to recreate that pattern of development. you have wonderful destinations in the downtown area. Your City Hall, the train station, and the Arts and Recreation Center right next door, plus Morgan Park, and all of the amenities that are available at Morgan Park. In addition to that, all of the shopping resources and dining opportunities that are available both on Ramona and Main. So it's these destinations that provide an incredible opportunity. But I'm reminded of what Paul Goldberger, an architectural critic, mentioned about urbanism. And when he's talking about urbanism, he's essentially talking about city life, and in this context, downtown life. And he's saying urbanism works when it creates a journey as desirable as a destination. So you have wonderful destinations. Now the talk is, and now the discussion is, how do you create that journey? How do you connect these destinations to create a vibrant downtown? So with that, I will hand it over to Phyllis Davis from Kittleson, who is going to walk us through some of our parking discovery work, and then she will introduce the next speaker after that.
Thank you, Kaiser. I think Vinayak's going to pull open the presentation.
Yes, I'm going to stop sharing. You have the screen, Vinayak.
Thank you. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending tonight. So as Kaiser said, when we first started reviewing the study area, we really wanted to look at what was happening within our right-of-way so we could really understand how mobility and the development is really occurring. And we really noticed that a large portion of the right-of-way was allocated to parking. So we wanted to determine how many spaces and what the average occupancy of those parking areas are. So we can start to decide and make decisions on how we can rethink our streets and the overall design of our downtown area. We also want to look at both public and private just to gain a sense of everything that is occurring within our study area. But we want to place a larger emphasis on public parking. So first we just quantified how many parking spaces there are. The map that you see on your screen illustrates all parking areas. Everything that's outlined in a blue is a public space, while the pink lines represent on-street parking. As the map illustrates, there's numerous parking spaces throughout the city, surface lots, on-street parking, and the parking garage adjacent to the Metrolink station. The numbers on your screen are the total number of spaces within each of those lots. In total, there's over 2,600 private and public parking spaces. But that just tells us one story. We really wanted to see, are these spaces really being utilized? So we reviewed 3 years of historical aerials to quantify how full or empty a parking lot typically is. Traditionally, we would go out and we would count the parking lots throughout the day, but just given COVID, the traffic conditions just aren't the same. So we really relied on these aerials assessments to give us a bigger picture of what's happening. So on your map, the areas represented in green are areas that are typically less than 50% full, with areas in red are areas that we found to be largely 80% or higher full. So if you just look in terms of public parking, and there's over 770 surface parking spaces. That doesn't account for that parking garage. But our aerial review of those parking spaces found a pretty low or underutilized occupancy rate. A couple of areas stood out to us as being a little different. So you can see on the northwest corner, Ramona and Main, those probably had the highest demand for parking throughout the downtown area. This is probably attributed to its proximity to the businesses or the parks. But due to the low occupancy in many of these parking areas, just like Kaiser said, provides us maybe some opportunities to either consolidate these parking areas or potentially convert these spaces into fun public areas, or put in some increased pedestrian or bicycle facilities, or just to redevelop that land. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Vinayak, who's going to talk a little bit more about the urban form and utilizing these parking spaces.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Vinayak Varne, Principal at Moorland Polyzoides. We are the urban design consultants on this project. Before I begin today, I just want to spell out for everyone here what the goals of this exercise are today. In any planning exercise, there are three fundamental questions that emerge. The first one is, from a physical standpoint, what do we keep? There are always things in a place that are worthy of keeping. We don't need to touch them. We don't need to change them. They're resources, they're assets. All you have to do is embrace them, enhance them, and life becomes wonderful. The second question that emerges in the world of physical planning is, what do you actually change and by how much? And the third question that emerges is, what do you completely take away? And I think somewhere in this muddle of questions lies the answers to puzzles. And why I'm bringing this up is because in the focus group meeting, which we had some weeks ago, clearly there were talks about the importance of making your downtown a pedestrian destination. Now, this is not some kind of ideological whim on terms of the consultants or the city or the stakeholders or the community. I think we all have the shared knowledge that making places for people to walk is a wonderful thing in so many ways. It's wonderful economically because it generates a lot of revenue. Because of great placemaking, people come to these places, they enjoy hanging out in these places, they want outdoor dining. In one of the meetings, there were comments made about the importance of outdoor dining and so on and so forth. It's healthy in terms of allowing walkability, bringing in verdancy on the streets. Streets become a resource. So the point I'm trying to make, without sort of belaboring the idea, is that the public realm, before even getting into private development, the idea of thinking about public realm as the greatest asset of your downtown is at the heart of everything. And your best friend in the case of the public realm, are two things. The first is the existing network of streets that you already have. You're blessed with a wonderful network of streets. You already have these streets, they have infrastructure below them. They carry cars today because they are made to carry cars dominantly. But if we begin to change their personality so that they can carry cars, but also carry pedestrian law, also carry trees, also make it easy for people to sit out there and enjoy them, not as conduits for cars, but as extended parks. I mean, I love saying this again and again. It's not my quote. It's a beautiful quote made by a scholar, a landscape architect. If we all think of our streets as extended parks, everything begins to change about the streets. So your streets are your biggest asset. So this is a diagram that says, before we get into any kind of urban design strategy related to private development, if we can sense the basic structure of your downtown purely from the point of view of public space, half of the puzzle is solved right there. And what this is trying to show you is that you have a fantastic asset right now, which is Morgan Park, and you have a fantastic asset in an east-west connector, which is Ramona Boulevard. You have a series of north-south streets that brings you down. You have a train track in the Metro Link, which will always be an asset because it will bring people here from destinations beyond the city. You have a building like City Hall, which is an important building in so many ways. And you have a lot of other things like parking lots and other things scattered around here. What this diagram is showing you is 3 or 4 important things. The first one is acknowledging all of the existing streets that there are. There's no reason to close any street. There's no reason to shut down any street. They're all extremely important pieces of infrastructure for 2 important reasons. One, if we recalibrate these streets by putting parking on them, parallel parking on all these streets, which we'll be studying over the next couple of days, immediately what happens is your street becomes a parking resource for you. So every street can take parking. So as your downtown develops, you don't have shortage of parking, not that you have a shortage of parking right now, but even in the future, as you begin to your downtown really begins to take on, having parking on the streets really helps. Number 2, parking is buffer for a pedestrian. If a pedestrian walks on a sidewalk next to a moving car, it's one perception. If you have a car parked on the street, it's another perception. Having cars continuous in the street is not an eyesore. All you need is to have someone like our landscape architect, talk about thinking of what happens between the cars as landscape, which we'll be talking about today, and you have all of a sudden a beautiful street. So this diagram acknowledges the existing streets you have and then says there are portions of this downtown where we need to introduce some new streets. Now, why is that the case? Because you have large swaths of land that are essentially becoming gigantic mega blocks. And mega blocks create a number of problems. It's like the anatomy of the human body. All of a sudden, if these streets are not there, and you have nothing but 4 streets making a huge piece of land, which is 1,000 feet by 1,500 feet or some amazing piece of land like this, All of a sudden, if you have an accident here or a choking point, there is no way for this traffic to go that side. There's a mobility issue. Mega blocks create mobility issues. The second thing it does, from a pedestrian standpoint, if you're here, and if this is all private development, you cannot go here easily, not go here easily, not go here easily, because there are large swaths of land that are blocking you. So we have learned the hard way that the enduring qualities of a pedestrian downtown are really centered on making blocks and streets that are completely interconnected and intimate in dimension, not more than 300 to 400 feet, maybe 450 feet, maybe stretching it to around 500 feet, but that's about it. So one of the things this diagram shows you is we are introducing in this private land in the long term, the concept, whenever it wants to happen, a network of streets, and a network of streets so that you now have a complete network that connects you from north to south with Ramona as the centerpiece. And scattered among this network of streets are a series of open spaces. You have Morgan Park, you have another one that may be envisioned here in terms of the current parking lot, which is a city-owned parcel. So we can figure out how to take over the parking at the appropriate moment, distribute it elsewhere, and make a beautiful asset here for you for outdoor dining and other things, which is very different from Morgan Park in terms of its character and quality. There could be other small spaces like parks, parklets, small parks. This is the one proposed by the new Starbucks that you're doing. And then a civic plaza in front of City Hall that begins to become a place in its own destination, just like you have a park or a plaza that invites you the moment you get out of the station. We're going to study all of these over the next coming days, but the fundamental idea of this is to recognize that the public realm armature, which we will be detailing both in section, in landscape, in trees, in form, will be the principal catalyst that the city can start thinking about as it begins to spawn the transformation of the downtown. And after you have done that, you now begin to see that out of it is born another puzzle where you say there are a number of wonderful existing buildings that also deserve particular attention. And there are parcels that over time, over a 10-year horizon, 15-year horizon, 20-year horizon, or perhaps never, it waits to be seen, may be places where private development transforms the downtown in different ways. All the buildings in this diagram that you see in brown are either buildings that we think should remain exactly as they are, or they're buildings that are in the pipeline. For example, this is City Hall, this is the parking structure, this project is already there, this is a proposed project here, this is a proposed project here, this is the Starbucks that is proposed, the drive-in Starbucks, this is the beautiful brick building that parks this corner, this is the beautiful plaster building, I forget the name, forgive me, Ron, help me here if you need to, but you know what I'm talking about, these two bookends. There are some buildings here that can stay. There's a housing project proposed here. There's a housing project proposed here. And there's a lot of things that are here as well. But it is possible that in a 15-year horizon, these parcels, which were identified by the city as catalytic sites, could take incremental dissolution and transform themselves into new urban projects that present a character and quality that are completely different. So what this diagram is basically planting the seed to get comments and feedback from you today is whether we're on the right track. What we're saying is Ramona becomes a fantastic east-west connector, the most beautiful street you can think about with magnificent trees and verdant shade in the median, on the sides. You have an entire network of streets that is equally verdant, that our landscape architect is going to make a beautiful streetscape plan out of. We have a series of parks that will be detailed for you. And then this becomes the scaffold, the armature, around which private development will now come and complete the faces of the street per a regulatory code that Kaiser will write to ensure that there are no blank walls, that the buildings respect the street, many of the things that I will be talking about tomorrow in the afternoon talk. We'll stop at that, and I can return back to any detailed questions that you have. But I'll say one last thing here before I go ahead. Note that on Ramona we have pedestrian crossings here, 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 and here. So what this does is we're saying the north and the south are now synergistic by taming Ramona down and making it such a beautiful street. It can not only carry cars, but it can actually foster pedestrian connections from north to south. So then Morgan Park doesn't become this sort of, uncrossable thing across Ramona. All you have to do is go here and cross it or cross it, and it becomes an integrated network from the train all the way to experiencing this downtown as a cohesive place, just like we do in many other cities. I'll stop at that and we can go to the next speaker, which is Dave Schneider, our landscape architect. Dave, I think I have to stop sharing my screen.
Yes. Okay, so this first slide that I'm going to start to go through is starting to discuss the open space network. And as Vinayak mentioned, we have a really large area, which is Morgan Park. That is over in this particular area here. And also the other existing park that's currently here is the City Hall Park. And so as he mentioned, we looked at introducing a few other urban spaces and parks along this area. One of them is this long linear park along this edge. We also looked at possibility of a plaza train station park within this particular area, adding a possible park around the art piece that's currently here, and then a neighborhood park if it so develops along this particular edge, and then possible plazas or small parklets on either edges of these existing buildings and one down here, and our connections across. So as we move across, we started to come up with what do some of these things start to look like. So the first area that we looked at was the linear park. What would that linear park start to feel like and start to be? So as you can see, this park now all of a sudden becomes this long linear space along the edge. There's opportunities along this whole edge for vehicles to come and be outdoor kitchens if there's not enough restaurants. It could also be used for marketplaces on weekends, farmers markets, various other elements. This one is a much softer version. This is a harder version, but we all have different opportunities as to what this space could be, and that's what we're going to start to look at. Again, part of it, nighttime use is also an important element. So would nighttime lighting, monumental lighting or entertainment lighting occur along in this park to add a lot of nighttime effects to the Ramona to get people to stop and maybe come in and stop it at Baldwin Park? And also we have opportunities not only for built environment within this, but those also could be simple shade canopies and various other elements. We also in the linear park, maybe at the entrances of Ramona at Main, there might be introductions of small water elements that could add as accents along that side. All of these things are looking to draw people in and to get them to move throughout the area. And also we looked at one of the options for the linear park was in this particular area next to Bogarts, where it starts to return back to Ramona. What would happen if these developments started to incur beyond that park as their development? Because we felt that these developments here are really relatively new and they probably aren't going to change in the near future, but these could change at some point in time. And this is just a possibility if you decided that you didn't want to have the linear park to continue this distance. You might look at doing something such as this, where you have sidewalk cafes, a little narrower hardscape area, and buildings coming right up to the edge. And then we started to look at the spine that takes you from the train station all the way to Ramona and also to City Hall. And what could that start to be? And you have a really wonderful captive audience of people on the train coming through on a regular basis. And so we didn't want to turn our backs to them. So we wanted to be able to show how vibrant a community Baldwin Park is. And so we thought that by allowing festive lights, outdoor dining, things of that nature, by allowing pop-up buildings just made out of containers along the parking lots, those are all ways of being able to make this look really festive and interesting for the audience, to maybe get them from their train to stop early and to come into Baldwin Park. And then this picture here just shows basically what one can do with simple shadow patterns and how that starts to happen within the paving and how it starts to make it really interesting places. And they also become ephemeral because as the light changes, so does the space change. And then also introductions of murals, outdoor lighting that can happen on the building. You have a couple really large canvases of the parking structure, as well as the ARC building right here that could actually be displayed some form of art elements in the way of lights or murals, those type of elements that can again be seen by the trains to get people to want again stop and get off. And then as you move through, we would want to create little spaces and plazas within this walkway to create places such as in this photograph where you have gatherings and people to come through. So again, it's a festive space. And then you have the Paseo network. So we have a Paseo on the north side that cuts through the retail that could connect to Morgan Park along that edge. And what do those elements start to look like? Because those are, again, all really important elements. We think shade is a really important element within Baldwin Park to get people to move through the space. And so we're starting to look at elements of that nature to get people to move through the entire area. And then we looked at the train station as another possibility of a park. We would also want that park to be a mobility hub. It would have a lot of other forms of transportation that people could take to get from the train station through Baldwin Park. And also the photograph here on the right starts to say, would be really nice, we don't know if this is possible yet, is to provide on-grade crossings across the train station to be able to get people to move freely to the north to get to Ramona. And then these two photos down at the bottom, just starting to vision as to what the arrival at the train station might be like if it turned out to be a park system. And then you would have your various different neighborhood parks, or your city civic park. And what do those elements start to be? Down here, obviously, if you have a neighborhood park, you might have lots of seating areas, places to move through, also places for people to play or children to play. And in the civic park, you might have a speaker's corner or a place for people to gather and have presentations for the city, various elements such as that for communications and presentations. And then we got into our whole network of streets. How are our streets going to start to look and how they're going to feel? And we want to introduce bicycle paths because it's not about walking, it's also about being able to go through the entire area on different modes of transportation. And bicycling is important. So we're looking at trying to have protected bicycle lanes along the side areas. We would have the parking as we show here along each particular side. We would probably try to introduce trees along that side to help narrow the street and also provide shade on both sides of these walkways. And as you see down here, this starts to be a representation of what it might be more in the neighborhood areas where we have just a simple bike lane on the slower streets. and they're more calm streets, again with the planting along those particular edges. And then this is more of an example again of maybe what Ramona would be with it along the bike areas. Again, the pedestrian areas and the bicycle areas would be protected from each other, so you don't really have pedestrians and bicyclists in the same path. And then along the right, this is how we would introduce and add our buses into the overall transit system. And then how do we start to utilize some of our spaces that we have now before this long-term plan starts to happen? We have lots of parking lots and various elements that can be reused, and they could be interim. The photograph up on here on the left is just taking a parking lot and painting it. It transforms the whole parking lot in one fell swoop by just going through them and painting the whole park. In this particular case, it would parking area. In this particular case, it's all a graphic orientation, but as you can see, it starts to become a play area, introduce very simple shade umbrellas all the way across the area, and it starts to fill in. These are, again, pop-up parks where people have introduced them in different places. This is a little bit more probably a little less temporary. And then this is another element where they just basically built these little structures and then started placing them around and developed the spaces that they could create within an overall space. So these are very movable elements, and all of these things start to change your overall downtown. And that's the end of my show right now, and I will turn it back to the hosts.
Okay, Ron.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Kaiser. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I want to encourage people that are that have logged on to please provide feedback, questions, comments for any of us.
I think we would specifically appreciate hearing some of the things you like about what we're saying, some of the things that you would like us to consider studying more, some of the things you don't like about what we're saying. I think it's all going to be very useful for the next 2 days.
Ron, is it possible we don't have, we have about 13 attendees. Could you unmute all of them? I really want to go through and ask individually, because we really want feedback from each and every person attending, so we can move forward. Melissa has a question. Kaiser, you mentioned that our current downtown specific plan has challenges. Can you discuss what some of the challenges are and how this new plan would address the challenges? Ron, I'll let you speak about the existing challenges, and I'll chime in on how the plan could potentially address those challenges.
Perfect. Before I begin, Mark, is it possible, I mean, based on those that are in attendance, I think it's safe, so that way we can unmute them. Mark.
Okay, will do.
Thank you, Mark. Again, the question is, thank you, Kaiser. You mentioned their current downtown specific plan has challenges. Can you discuss what some of those challenges are and how this new plan will address the challenges? One of the key things that has been brought up, and again, with trying to implement the existing downtown specific plan, again, as time goes on, a plan ideally should be able to grow with time. So essentially, just as the years go by, being able to accommodate new types of development, new types of uses. So what we're finding in the existing downtown specific plan is, again, the availability of land isn't what it used to be. And so we're largely dealing with today is smaller size lots. And so being able to use the highest and best use for those lots to do mixed use development, commercial development, and essentially that would allow and spur development within the downtown. So those are the minor tweaks that I think that and challenges that are within the existing specific plan that we'll be addressing in this downtown update. So that way, with time, we're not having to go back and make revisions. So that way, there's I'm at a loss of a word here, but essentially just grow, not so much grow, but acclimate with as times change, if you understand. But I hope that answers your question. And go ahead, Kaiser.
I was going to quickly add to what you said, a number of things. One, I think your specific plan was prepared in the pre-COVID era. And I think the COVID era, the pandemic that we're going through, provides some unique challenges. And with those challenges come opportunities. Also, Southern California is facing an acute housing crisis. And we now have the new numbers from the state to the RENA tool that gives us a specific indication. And Michael talked about the number of units that we need to accommodate within our city to meet our obligation for providing fair share of housing, affordable housing within the downtown area. In addition, I want to quickly share share my screen and let you take a look at something that we have working that we intend to share with you as we start developing the code. But here's a page from the existing specific plan, and it talks about the different zoning districts that you have, and on that map we have indicated the permissible heights, the permissible height in terms of the height allowed in feet, and then within parentheses, typically what that means in number of stories. And as you can see, there's a mixed use zoning primarily permeates in your downtown core, which allows for 50-foot tall buildings, 4 stories. But then as it meets the edges, that edge is not as gracefully addressed. And I think there are opportunities that we want to explore, particularly on Downing. As you see, there are 2-story buildings facing a parking lot and a station. And that's something that certainly is worthy of exploration. And in other places where you have industrial land or in proximity of industrial land, for example, right here, you have 3-story, but then as you walk away from the downtown, you have 4-story. So there's no real, and at the corner of Sterling Way, you have 3-story, 2-story, but then a 4-story. So there's no rhyme or reason for how that pattern of intensity is organized. So we want to take another look at that. And I think, Ron, working with the developers for the past 4 years, you've experienced some comments and some feedback. And I think Michael interviewed some developers that have mentioned the challenges of building under the current code. So we want to take a look at those provisions and make them more friendly for the market, at the same time more contextual for the neighborhood, and protect the neighborhoods in a much better format than the existing specific plan does. Ron, I'll pass it on to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kaiser. What just one more stab at it. What I was is the existing, good point on the existing heights within the existing specific plan. With this new update, essentially being a living, breathing document, in that it acclimates with time. So essentially, I just wanted to clear that up.
I think the same person had a follow-up also. I was just about to ask if the current underutilized parking can be surplus for future development or open space areas, but David discussed that and could be an option. David, you want to talk about the unutilized parking?
Well, my understanding is, and through the mobility groups and everyone's recommendations, that many of the areas that we have are underutilized parking spaces right now, and that they would eventually become some form of future development, be wherever they happen to be located. If they're on the southern side, they might be a park. The other places, if they're on the southwestern side, they may be future development. So all we were doing was looking at possibilities of trying to activate those spaces as options in the meantime until that development starts to come. I would assume any new development would be required to satisfy whatever parking requirements they have, and also that the street improvements would also increase the amount of parking throughout the neighborhood, because we would be adding on-street parking. So that would be offsetting parking lot losses.
Just to add to that, the most interesting parking lots you have right now are the ones facing Ramona, which are city-owned. And they're important because they're not private land, right? I mean, you can actually do something on them in the immediate future rather than wait for a developer and wait for negotiations. So one of the things we are going to explore is not just introducing parking on as many public streets as we can, but also take Ramona, where you currently don't have parking consistently, and try to see if we can introduce parking along both sides of Ramona, so that you can then, that length of Ramona along with the other streets itself becomes enough parking that you can begin to talk about how to reuse these other publicly city-owned parking lots, either as open spaces or for private development.
And just to echo and to add on one other thing too, is that parking is not cheap to build, especially for the private sector when you're building, let's say, parking underground. Or the parking to meet code requirements for some development. So there's also the possibility that we can reutilize some of the public parking as in lieu for the private parking, which makes the development cheaper. And then in addition, that parking can better be shared between uses. So right now, if you're building parking for a private residential development, when people go to work, that parking sits empty during the day. If that was more of a outdoor or public facility, that could then be used by businesses during the day, used by residents at night, and it improves the efficiency of those spaces. So those are a lot of the things that we're going to be looking at as part of the parking plan for this project.
Okay, next question, Steve H. Can you plan or insert for a flexibility buffer to allow the specific plan to expand without having to go through a general plan zone change, mainly on the specific on the single family lots near the SP? I'm thinking that's probably SP is station. Let me try to answer that. And Steve, if you can provide clarification on what you mean by SP, that we can better understand your question. But I think you're right on in that one of the reasons why we are exploring and why we have increased the area is to build in that buffer, so that to examine some of the areas that are at the station, that are single family and they're facing parking lots that have the potential for redevelopment and for reinvestment that is occurring, and to take advantage of the reinvestment that's occurring at the station. So it's for that reason that we've already included additional parcels to include that buffer and to address that buffer and to build that in the specific plan. Unfortunately, specific plans are a legislative action. They're not a planning document per se, because they have a code that goes with the specific plan. There's an actual development code which is regulatory and which is binding. These documents are legislative and they require council approval. So in the future, I think it would be a healthy exercise to continue to examine the edges, the boundaries, and to assess if that boundary needs to be expanded to include more areas. But the short answer to your question is we've already included the buffer areas within this specific plan to address and to protect the neighborhoods.
Perfect. Thank you, Kaiser. It looks like we have some, if that person that's on the laptop, you are unmuted. Essentially the person that's raised their hand. So feel free to comment. Maybe that they're having technical difficulty with their mic.
Hello?
Oh, okay. Looks like coming through.
Hey, Ron. Yeah, I got some general comments. And so it's been my experience when it comes to specific plans. Sometimes there isn't a correlation between, the fire, life safety, fire. And so oftentimes, the city spends hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands or $1 million on a specific plan, but there isn't a correlation with the fire, and there's a disconnect, and oftentimes life safety takes precedence over the underlying zoning. So for example, typically fire requires a certain amount of lengths for hose poles, so it may require for me to break up a building in order to satisfy that requirement. But unfortunately, I need to request for zoning relief in order to meet that life safety. So a lot of times, these urban infill sites are hard to develop. They're irregular shaped, and we need every single incentive or relief or variance in order to make these developments work. And if we're using those to meet the underlying fire and life safety regulations, there's a disservice, I guess. The next thing I want to mention is currently the state is emphasizing, whether directly or indirectly, the production of housing, whether it's through RENA, whether it's through financing provided to the cities, whether it's financing for housing, or whether it's the various Senate bills and Assembly bills geared towards production of housing. A lot of times, these new bills supersede the underlying zoning for the site. For example, I had a project that had a specific plan that was passed in 2014, and all that was moot now because of the current Senate bills and Assembly bills. So making sure there's a connection between what you guys are proposing and what's out there, and the Assembly bills goes a long way. And the next thing is, the state is for affordable housing. The state is emphasizing like ministerial approvals and emphasizing providing relief for such things as building heights and parking. So for a site located in this downtown specific plan, in theory, a developer can rely on these different Assembly bills and develop housing much higher than the current baseline zoning allows and park the site at 0. So just making sure that there's some research that's involved, making sure that whatever you guys are proposing for this specific plan coincides with the various bills currently in place right now.
Kaiser, did you want to take a step first? Or?
I'll take a stab, and I recognize the voice. Hi, and I have had a chat with you on all of these important topics that you just mentioned. In terms of fire department, you're absolutely right, and that's why we're working so closely with the city and its development review team to make sure that they are reviewing these plans. Just conceptually, I will offer this. A grid of interconnected streets provides better fire access than large chunks of land, super blocks that are disconnected. So I think what we are doing in terms of the specific plan, in terms of creating more opportunities, more street frontage that can be accessed directly by a fire truck, is actually increasing fire safety in the area and providing them more opportunities to fight the fire from more street frontage rather than having to pull into alleys or driveways. So the grid system is a cogent response, but your point is well taken. Individual projects, as they are reviewed, will have to go through the fire department. And at this point, at the plan level, we're working with the city closely to make sure that nothing we're doing would compromise the ability to provide emergency services to these sites. And then I would also add, in terms of the assembly bills they mentioned, the city is concurrently working on a housing element update that has either that has been initiated or will be initiated fairly soon, and that we're very cognizant of the city's obligation and are looking at every opportunity to meet them within the downtown area, because I think the downtown is the city's best opportunity to address some of the RHNA numbers and to provide housing, affordable housing within the downtown area.
And I guess another comment is maybe, open space is great. And a lot of times it's very difficult for cities, especially nowadays with COVID, cities to get those dollars necessary to develop the open space or infrastructure improvements needed to support future developments. I know there's tons of programs at the state level that provide infrastructure dollars, or whether it's for parking, whether it's for parks, open space. And so if there is an opportunity for strategic public-private partnerships, this would be a great opportunity in a downtown specific plan, because you can develop those infrastructure projects to create walkability, to create the parks, to open up the downtown specific area. I know personally, I worked for the city, and in which they were trying to get the funds for a park for 8 years. I came in and developed the affordable housing project, and we teamed up and chased infrastructure dollars. And within a year, we were able to acquire those dollars necessary for the city to develop the park. And the reason we were able to do that is because of a public-private partnership. So if there's opportunities and the city is willing to partner up with those private developers, this would be the area to do it.
Excellent comment, 100% agreement.
Thank you, George, for all those comments. Again, if you'd like to make any comments, please raise your hand and feel free to provide your comments based on the presentation tonight.
Well, also tell us, this would be helpful, and I think Vinayak mentioned this earlier. Tell us what you like so that we can keep that and build off of that. Tell us the ideas that were presented that you like. Tell us if you have some ideas of your own that you would like us to consider or incorporate, or tell us if there are certain things that you don't think are appropriate for downtown Baldwin Park, and we will try to address that to the best of our ability. But this is really an opportunity to work iteratively, and it works if you provide us feedback and comments, both positive as well as things that you would like to see changed. I think you have a raised hand from Jean.
Oh.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Jean. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's Councilmember Jean Ayala. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I joined a little late. I've been rushing from here to there. But I just want to comment, first of all, that I appreciate all the work that's being done and how you're all collaboratively working to present this information to our community. and I appreciate the input from everybody. I just wanted to acknowledge that even from our first meeting when we met with our planning commissioners and we all had like a conversation, and where we are right now, I see a lot of growth and I see a lot of movement. And I personally really appreciate the effort to join the Metrolink area to the downtown area. I appreciate the options of the open space. I appreciate the different options in terms of like covering, you know, with those paseo kind of ideas to kind of link those two entities, because I kind of see Ramona as a big divider, and I really appreciate the options that you're giving. I think they're very aesthetically pleasing. I think that they're going to really help our downtown and our business area, and I look forward to seeing what the other meetings are going to bring about in terms of conversation. And I encourage anybody who's listening, maybe they'll log into this later on, to bring their friends, their other resident neighbors, so that they too can chime in, because I know a lot of people have stuff to say, and I think it's really important that they have the opportunity like this to go ahead and do that. So I just want to acknowledge all the work from our city staff, but in addition with everybody that's working together. So thank you for the opportunity to say what I liked, and thank you for working together, and I look forward to the other meetings the rest of this week. Thank you.
Ron, can I just address a comment to Jean? Jean, I would strongly encourage you to attend tomorrow's noon presentation. It's going to be an incredible treat for you, because I know you're such an avid lover of architecture and urbanism. You're going to enjoy Vinayak's talk. So if you have time tomorrow noon, please log in. You're going to enjoy it.
Yes, and Kaiser, just to let you know, because maybe you don't know, but besides being a lifelong resident here in Baldwin Park, I'm a 28-year veteran teacher. So I'll be in the classroom teaching my students on the north end of the city. So just to let you know, but I look forward to hearing that, because I know that that's made public later on. So,
well, this might be actually, you know, I wonder if we can get the students involved, because they might pick up some good civic lessons from it.
I agree. But just to let you know, that would be the only reason I wouldn't be present at that time. Okay, but thank you, Kaiser.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Alaya. Perfect. Let's see if we have any more comments.
Ron, I don't want to pick on people, but I would love to, just to get some feedback. So Ming, Ray, Christopher, Eric, please share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you.
We did get one, we have one comment regarding bicycle circulation. It says, I live in San Gabriel, and Las Tunas streetscape was renovated a few years ago to include traffic calming devices, such as landscape peninsulas that throat intersections. These elements seem to have the effect of forcing bicycles further into vehicle traffic. This has had an effect of discouraging bike travel on these main streets. In our experience, bike circulation seems to work best either on quiet residential streets or on paths, whether large sidewalks or bike paths. Thank you, Steve, for that comment.
Kaiser, should we take a stab at answering this one?
Yep, please do.
All right. So it's a great point, and there's a lot of factors that go into the design of bicycle facilities. We often look at things such as vehicular travel speeds, the number of bicyclists, the type of bicyclists, whether they're people who are familiar riders and are commuters who will bike through anything, versus those that are casual users, ones that are with families, etc. And then we also want to look at safety and where there's been a history of accidents or a history of crashes between peds and bikes and vehicles. So we try to take all these things into account when we're designing the bike facility. Another key element for consideration is the connectivity of the bike facility to local destinations and to regional connections. So as an example, Ramona has currently a very narrow striped bike lane. I believe it's 4 feet wide in both directions. And that connects to facilities both to the east and the west. So we want to make sure that we have that connectivity. So if we have people biking on Ramona to the west, we don't want them to have to get off Ramona, travel around some other route, and then get back on to continue that longer trip. So we want to make sure that we're providing good regional connectivity. But then separately, we want to make sure we're providing local connectivity. So if we see that there's a lot of people biking between the Metrolink station and City Hall, or the Metrolink station and the park, we want to make sure we're providing routes to accommodate those. And one of the great programs that the city is starting is a bike share program. And they're looking at installing bike share facilities at the park, at City Hall, at the Metrolink station, and other places around. So we'll be able to get some really good information to see where people are traveling to and from. So all these different things get taken into account when we're looking at the bike facilities that are being out there. We always strive to provide the most protection for cyclists as we can. So having buffered bike facilities, having spaces between moving cars, having areas for doors to open up so they won't hit bicyclists. These are all really important factors that we take into account. So we'll be looking at this. We'll take a look at the example that you mentioned and kind of see our thoughts on it and make sure that we're not repeating some of those same mistakes that you've seen other places.
Thank you, Tim. Looks like we have Ray Albert. Please feel free to submit your questions or comments.
Yeah, hi, Ron and everybody. As far as everything looks, what you've got planned with the parks, open spaces, and creating these walkable areas and all these nice renderings that you had of things, it's all great. Is there any plan or anything in effect that would prevent or keep homeless people from claiming all those areas as their own and going in? And that's kind of a big thing with the cities lately, and it kind of ruins what you're trying to gain. That's it. Hello?
Thank you, Ray, for your comment. Kaiser, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I would say that again, I would point to the housing element that we're working on, which will address the issue of homeless population. It's one of those things that actually is a bellwether of good community, good environment, good urbanism. That you have parking problems, you have problems with people who are unfortunate and find themselves in a homeless situation. The fact that they are coming to Baldwin Park means that there are things in Baldwin Parks that are desirable, that people want to be close to, that there are amenities that are available. But at the same time, we want to address their needs, whatever they are, whether they're medical, mental, physical, housing needs, employment needs, and I think it's a comprehensive strategy which begins with a number of tools, and I think the housing element is going to try to address the housing component, and then the city might have other programs to address homelessness. Ron, I'm not aware of the programs that you have, but maybe you can chime in on the programs that you have to alleviate the homeless problem.
Yeah, we do have. I'm aware that we do have a homeless awareness program through our parks department. I don't know the inner workings of those. Of that department, but I know that there are services out there to help those who are experiencing homelessness, and it's an issue that a lot of cities are dealing with right now throughout the state. But I know that the city is a champion of providing services to those people, again, that are experiencing homelessness. And again, some of the key state programs that are coming down from the state with Project Home Key. I believe the other one was there was another homeless program, but essentially is to create permanent housing and also short-term housing. And again, that includes probably taking up some existing motel, hotel uses to be able to provide for those people that are experiencing homelessness.
Ron, can I maybe provide it might be good to connect Ray to your Parks Department official and see if they can get more information from them, and maybe we can circle back if that information is something that we need to reflect within our specific plan efforts.
Absolutely. Ray, I will be in touch with you. I'll provide my email shortly where you can get in touch with me by email and office phone.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Again, Ray, for those sharing your comments. Looks like we have 2 more comments from Steve. It says, I like that you are looking at underutilized public parking and being able to dual use of public and private parking, but can you also look into providing housing above the dual use public parking, maybe creating zoning for this dual public parking housing use? Steve's also submitted another comment. Can you also add language to the zoning code that if a developer is not going to provide affordable housing within the 30%, 60% area median income, that they must pay a fee to the city for an affordable housing fund? This fund can be used to help fund future affordable housing.
And that gets into the inclusionary housing component with your housing element. So I think you may want to provide some information on the housing element and when those meetings are taking place, so that these questions can also be directed there, so that whatever we are working and whatever policies that the housing element is proposing are working in sync to strengthen each other. In terms of the first question, I'm still trying to understand. Steve, if you can get on, unmute and help me understand. We are proposing to readdress some of the underutilized parking, primarily within the private realm, and look at opportunities for providing additional housing. And we're also looking at some public parking that you have along Ramona, and in some cases actually bringing the building's front closer to the street. And those buildings could very well accommodate additional housing, although that's not a requirement. But the codes that we would write would allow for a variety of use depending on what the market would support. So I don't know if that addresses your question. If it doesn't, please unmute yourself and clarify, and I'm happy to add to the answer.
Well, gentlemen, can you hear me? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. What I'm really trying to say is, because I know the city doesn't want to lose parking, but yet they want to encourage best utilization of the site. So what I was trying to get at is, instead of having the zoning for maybe like a commercial use it as a high density, but also add a caveat to that. So it's like a high density with a caveat that if it is a public parking, then you keep some of the public parking, but they could do high density residential or commercial or whatever they want to do, but may have dual use of that property instead of having to go through a zone change or something of that sort. Over.
I'm sorry, I'm still not following your question, Ron. Do you can you Steve, please repeat your question?
So the question is, so you're gonna zone the public parking a certain zoning, but yet
Correct.
still wants the public parking for some of its uses. So instead of having a developer trying to like rezone it for the maximum use, but also put a caveat in there that the city would still like parking in that whatever development component is there. So say it's a R4, high density use, but there's a caveat saying that, the developer must provide some parking for the city as a dual use.
Right. No, I think that's a terrific idea, and that's something that I think as we look into the parking management plan, if the city has a parking area that is public parking and a developer is interested in occupying that public parking space and the city is interested in pursuing that to allow more developable land to the property owner, that we make sure that that loss of parking is somehow compensated either by in lieu fee or building or contributing towards parking elsewhere, so that we continue to have the resource that is available. Is that address your comment? Steve?
I think we may have, it looks like he's still on. Steve, can you hear us?
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Is that better? Hello?
Steve, yes, we can hear you.
I'm just trying to say, like, because as the specific plan gets implemented, you're going to bring more units, which brings more dollars, which is going to bring, you need more parking to house these dollars to make sure they're there to shop or do whatever they need to do in that area. That's what I was just trying to make sure that we keep
Right, got it.
as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We have one comment from Eric Pena. The first introductory meeting listed about 3 different options for revitalizing the downtown area, including a park near the metro station, closing a section of Ramona, and placing a park in front of City Hall. It's unclear if a decision was made. I did see a new sketch during today's presentation. Is that the option the city will be moving forward with? I think you, Vinayak touched on this a little bit.
I'll take that. Eric, when we showed you the 3 first scribbles, as I call them, they were not intended to be 3 different master plans or anything of that nature. They were meant to be 3 different ways of looking at what might become priorities for the city to change this downtown. And as we have contemplated about all this, we still don't know the answer, and there's no way to predict, where you would start. I think that'll depend on the market, that'll depend on so many factors. What we are trying to do here over the next 3 days is create a blueprint, a master plan for a 15 to 20-year horizon that includes, within certain parameters through the auspices of our economic consultant and so on, understanding the market over a 15, 20-year horizon and saying, what are the possibilities that there are? And we are beginning to realize that there might be a possibility of marrying a little bit of all 3. I mean, there's nothing that says that Ramona cannot become a fantastic street, which is pedestrian friendly. There's nothing that says the station area couldn't develop. And there's nothing that says that your city hall could not become a new place in itself. 20 years is a long time. So what we are giving you is a blueprint. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. We don't know yet. What we are going to do by the end of the charrette is probably talk to you a little bit on the 3rd day about what are the first things we can see happening in the immediate horizon of 1 to 3 years. But beyond that, I think it's very difficult to predict as of now what the next steps will be. So to answer your question more succinctly, I think we realize that all of the 3 strategies that we had proposed have merits in them, and the consolidation of all of them and more, touching a few things here and there. For example, the early sketches did not include the transformation of the block to the west of Morgan Park, but these things have emerged as well over time. So as we've studied it, this is the picture that is gradually emerging, and over the next couple of days, more things may emerge or more things may be polished as we understand this place even further with your help.
Thank you, Vinayak, for that clarification. So if anybody has any more comments, I just want to give a general comment from staff's perspective. Again, as we're working together, as you have mentioned, Vinayak, what the consultant team has presented in working with city staff, this is exactly what the city's been looking forward to in creating a sense of place for downtown Baldwin Park, with the greening of Ramona Boulevard, adding bicycle, improving mobility within the downtown, bicycle and pedestrian, and moving along with the market study that was presented earlier today during the noon talk, really kind of gives you that foundation, again, as I mentioned, on what the city needs to focus on to help bring all that together to make that sense of place, that uniqueness that draws people to come and experience the uniqueness of what downtown Baldwin Park has to offer. And again, people, there's a reason why people go to cities like downtown Pasadena or uptown Whittier or Monrovia, because they provide that experience. And so what you've presented tonight, I think encapsulates everything that I think the community and staff have been discussing for quite some time. But just overall general comments, I think we are heading again in the right direction.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, I got 2 more comments. 3.
Sure, George, chime in.
So I think one thing to take into account is ride sharing. More and more young people are purchasing cars and relying on ride sharing. So maybe incorporating the ability for Uber, Lyft, drop-offs and pickups within the site of the future proposed development, and also micro mobility. I don't know if it makes sense now, but maybe 20 years from now, where in downtown city of LA and Long Beach and San Diego, you see those those scooters. So maybe designing strategic locations where residents can use the scooters and leave them parked at strategic locations. And one thing I came across was with regards to a specific plan was a incentive-based, credit-based plan where the city provided certain credits for which a developer proposed certain amenities. So for example, larger open spaces, parks, affordable housing, infrastructure improvements. And so that was weighted, if the developer provided those such things, it gave them a credit, and then the credit, the developer can utilize that credit for certain, variances or incentives. So I thought that was pretty innovative, where it was kind of like a give and take, where developer provides certain benefits in order to make their project more feasible. And my last comment is on the mixed use. I think right now there's a mixed use component, and it's been my experience that typically these smaller mixed use projects don't really work out, don't really pencil out for a variety of reasons. One of them is developers tend to be niche developers. So if they're a multifamily developer, they're experts in multifamily. If they're commercial or office, they're experts in those things. So sometimes when a residential developer is trying to do a mixed-use commercial component, they maybe don't have the connections and the financial wherewithal or expertise to make that development, mixed-use development, vibrant and sustainable. And so I think looking at that mixed-use requirement and either not having it be a requirement can go a long way. Otherwise, you may get sites in which you may have vacancies, and those vacancies are attributed to the owner's lack of experience. That's it for me.
Thank you, George.
Should we, Ron, should we talk a little bit about what we're doing tomorrow so people can anticipate and come?
Perfect. Yes, so tomorrow, thank you for that, Vinayak. So tomorrow, we have another noon presentation and also an evening presentation. And tomorrow's noon presentations going to be presented by Vinayak Barn on elements of successful downtown. And that'll be at noon. And then we'll go into at 6 p.m. through an evening charrette to discuss concepts. And Vinayak, if you can, if you just give a little more detail.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate because I think it'll be good for people to know what to expect, and then you can come prepared with some more thoughts as well. So in the afternoon, the presentation will mainly focus on both public and private realm strategies for what really makes a walkable downtown. On the one hand, you have fantastic streets and parks, etc., and on the second one, you have private development. And how does, I alluded to it a little bit in the focus group meetings, but how does private development in the form of housing really not just make buildings, but make places that are collectively, ensembles of buildings with different character responding to what is around you? We'll talk about all that tomorrow. And then in the evening, everything you saw today will be explored in a much more robust form. We'll present mobility strategies in 3 dimensions, talking about street sections as 3-dimensional elements. Talk to you about landscape strategies and urban design strategies in terms of exactly how infill is going to change this place. So we have only 3 days. So tomorrow is going to be a very important day to hear you guys on really the things you really like and the things you think we should examine over the next 24 hours as we go into the final day. Please come with lots of thoughts and lots of comments.
Thank you, Vinayak. So we haven't received any more comments or questions. I'm wondering if there's anything else. It looks like we just got another comment. On Mr. Albert's comment about homelessness in public spaces, it might be interesting to review typologies of secured parks. For example, Olympic Park in downtown has a secured edge with entry portals that can be locked at night. The fencing is integrated with landscaping. Thank you, Steve, for that comment. We will definitely look into that. So we'll do a last call. Any comments or questions before we conclude the meeting for tonight, and look forward to the next 2 days for Noon Talks and Charrette. Kaiser, we just posted the website for the downtown, where you'll find the presentations that were given tonight and also this afternoon, and also information regarding any updated information regarding the downtown. Please visit plandbp.com. And again, these meetings are recorded, so if you'd like, you can go ahead and review these meetings again, and please feel free to send us any comments or questions after this to my email, and I will circulate that to staff and the consulting team. But otherwise, it looks like we haven't received any more comments within the Q&A or the chat box. Yep, no comments. So thank you, everybody, for tonight, and we look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow noon and the evening charrette. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.